Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you guys to the panel discussion. We have invited Sara Mornell and Sara Nezamzadeh. We're going to start by talking about Sara Mornell first. She's a transformational coach for artists who are looking to thrive, and she has been creating something called the Mornell Method, about which we're going to talk in detail. And she's been creating this for 14 years to train artists how to stop acting, which is interesting. And again, like something that we will talk about, she has worked with famous celebrities or world famous baseball players, and we're very excited to have her here. Thank you so much, Sara, for joining us.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. What an intro.
Yay! Yes, I feel like I'm ready for Hollywood now.
Yes.
I would also like to introduce Sara Nezamzadeh. She works at Stride Management, and we will learn from her about the agenting business, what it's like to be on the other side, and also what are agents really looking for from actors. Some of Stride Management's client list include Oscar winner Nicolas Cage, Emmy nominee Mike O'Malley, as well as a lot of young Hollywood talent. So very excited to have you, Sara, here.
Thank you.
Amazing. So I guess we're going to start by learning about acting from Sara first. So how to actually become or present your true self in front of a camera is what we want to learn. And then after that, we're going to transition into how should we as actors present ourselves to an agent. After that, we can then move on to the agenting business. So that is what I'm hoping the flow of the conversation could be. But yeah, just feel free to interrupt me and just be yourself. Very excited. So I guess we're gonna first start by talking to you, Sara, about acting and like how you've been working as an acting coach. So can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got your start as a transformational coach for actors?
Yes, thank you for asking and for having me. I'm excited to talk to everyone. So I was an actress for 25 years. Um, I came from a family of like a Jewish doctor and a mom who said she converted. So like a Jewish family, nice Jewish family. And they were like, if you're going to be an actor, be the best, which was really cool because I think so many people don't get the support of their families. Mine like supported and then pressured.
Mm-hmm.
But I found myself in acting when I was 13. I was like a misfit. I never fit in. I was quiet, shy, awkward. School was really hard for me. But when I was 13, I started acting. I found like my community and my people. And then I went to the British American Drama Academy when I was 16, 17, spent 2 summers training in Oxford, learning Shakespeare. I auditioned for Carnegie Mellon, which was a conservatory training. 600 people auditioned, 60 actors were accepted. And when I was there, don't ask me the year. When I was there, the cut program was really intense. So we started with 60. And by the time we were juniors, we had 17 actors left. So it was myself and 3 other women, and then the rest were men.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to go to Hollywood. I always wanted to do film and TV. I'm a terrible theater actor, in my opinion. I just didn't love theater, but back then that was the training. That is what you did. If you wanted to be taken seriously in Hollywood, you needed to be a classically trained actor. So that's what I did. And graduated, went to Hollywood. And like throughout my career, my college career, they were like, we're going to kick you out. You're not doing enough. You've got a boyfriend. Like it was an intense, rigorous program, which really set me up for the work ethic that I have today and that I like really teach with my actors. Um, Went to Hollywood and was signed right out of school. Was very fortunate to get a great agent, the Paul Kohner agency. My dad took me to the interview. They signed me, and within a few auditions, I kind of realized that the training that I'd been doing in school was theater training. And when I got sides, it wasn't crossing over. The training wasn't necessarily working when it came to getting 6 pages and needing to be prepared to go into the room at 10 o'clock the next morning when you get the pages that night at 6 p.m. So I had to sort of like start finding a new way of dealing with the audition because it was an art form that I hadn't truly learned at school. Within a few years, I booked my first lead in a pilot and a lot of network television and a few films and was working and booking. And yet I would have a lot of trouble with the business of Hollywood. And normally when I was succeeding, after a really, really great year or two where I was like recurring on 2 shows on the same network, which back then wasn't done, I just got discouraged and I wanted to leave. Like it didn't gel with who I am as an artist. I understood the business fairly well, um, but it wasn't like why I became an actor. So cut to, I quit, I came back. I quit, I came back. I mean, the first time I quit, my agents cried. The third time they were like, yeah, you'll be back. And I totally was. I officially retired in 2017 from acting. But during the 25 years of my career, I worked a lot. And when I would quit the third time, my agents sent me an actor and said, hey, he's getting bad feedback on an audition. You've always really done well in auditions. Could you help him? I was like, yeah. So I coached him and he got an immediate callback, and his manager called my agent, who was coach. And through word of mouth, I very quickly built a business based on pure audition coaching. It was a field that there was a lot of classes in LA, but it wasn't necessarily focused on the reality of going in the room. And I was still going in the room, and auditioning and booking work and working with people like George Clooney. And I mean, Jesus God, the list goes on and on. So I'm not going to sit here and list my credits, but I was working at a very high level. And whatever I learned, I would pass along to my actors. The audition itself to me was a different art form. So we have theater and theater technique. We then have film and TV acting, and then we have the art form of the audition, and they're all very different. And I think that we just need to approach them differently. So when I was acting towards the end of my career and starting to coach, I spent a lot of time with my actors talking about what worked and what didn't and why, and breaking down really what it meant to go into the room and be a gladiator, an Olympian, and have the mindset of what it takes to book versus the artistic self, which can really go into the rooms and suffer because we're walking into judgment. It's not a safe space, black box theater where it's like, be vulnerable. It's like walk into a room, rip your guts and your heart out, have them say, great, thank you, and you leave. And so I didn't feel like actors were accurately getting prepared to go into the room. And so I started working on the audition. And that became the foundation for what I was doing. When I really started building the method and creating classes based off of what I'm seeing in film and TV, my most recent class that I'm doing is based off of the audition, anything, anywhere, all at once audition. Did you see that, Sarah? The actress who did, I mean, it was just like epic audition. How do we watch that and then apply it in our audition? So I like to create classes every week. I like to create off of what we're seeing. It's just training that I didn't necessarily get. During that time, I started working with a baseball player on his game. And that was just a crazy, wild thing to be working with someone who had won a World Series on his mentality when it came to coaching. My father, I said, was Jewish, but daughter of 2 shrinks. So my dad was a psychiatrist, my mom's psychiatric nurse. So I spent a lot of time in therapy, and I love psychology. I love the psychology of acting. I love the psychology of sports. I love what I get to do and what I get to create. But it was really when I started coaching that I noticed I was doing the best work of my career, and I wasn't acting at all, at all. And I also was doing this thing where I was looking at the actor that I was working with, because I would, Sarah sends me a client. I have 30 minutes or 50 minutes or maybe an hour to get them prepared. And I don't let an actor go into an audition unprepared. Like it's either fucking amazing or it's not at all, period. That's what I do. Because that's the stakes that we're competing at. This is a competition. Someone else will work harder. And every audition is an opportunity to make a fan. So Sarah will send me someone, and I would be so intense on what they were doing that I'd forget, like, I didn't care about my lines. I'd go, I'd grab the line, I'd come back up, I'd be coaching them in watching, like, if they blinked or moved their shoulder and be like, ooh, that's something. Who is that in you? and pull that front and center. Acting for camera is like you're just taking a drop of food coloring to shade the glass of water. It's not a big thing, it's a tiny thing. It's subtle, it's simple, it's small. And so what I noticed is I was working with these actors, and all of a sudden I'm reading the material twice and I'm completely off book. That never happened in my career. I'm not acting at all. I'm not doing the stage directions. I'm not looking at the breakdown. I'm simply being present, and the work is coming to life in a fraction of the time it took with traditional preparation. So I was really curious about, like, what is this that I'm experiencing as a coach, and how do I teach that, because I'm being myself and I'm not putting anything on. And then I realized, I get it. Carnegie made me a great actor, and I'm a great actor. And that helps when you're auditioning, because when you're an actor, you're aspiring to be in the moment. When you're auditioning, you have to act as if you're in the moment better than anyone else. So it acting has its place, but we are all great actors in many ways. Life teaches us how to act. School, society, pressure, parents. We're all craving authentic connection, yet my training taught me how to be an actor. What I realized when I started coaching is it's like I was removing the armor, and like a turtle without its shell, I was simply open and there and so much more than enough. And it just like, it was like a laser beam right to the heart of how I can play this role if they're lucky enough to hire me. So many actors go into the audition thinking, is this right? Is this wrong? Is this what they're looking for? Am I being the breakdown? And it's like, no, never worry about that. I want you to think, how can I play this person with my life, my story, my voice, based on my research, based on the facts and the research of the project and who's involved? How can I play this in a way that they haven't seen today, that's unique to me because of who I am? How can I be brave enough to stop acting? How can I be fearless enough to be myself in the role? And that's what I started working on teaching. And now I've got several hundred classes that I get to pull from, that teach people how to be their authentic version of all of themselves, starting with really finding who you are.
Wow.
So that's me.
Incredible. And I think you did give us an idea of what the Mornell method is, but can you go into more detail with it? How do you start with it? For instance, when an actor comes to you, how do you start training them? Yeah. And then how do you know that now the training is fulfilled? Is there also a point where you're like, yes, okay, they're done, or is it
Yeah.
just a never-ending continuous process of improvement and learning?
No, there's a time when you're done, and then, like, one of my actors is Jesse Williams, and we have been together for 15 years. 15 years. He doesn't coach with me on every project. And after he booked Grey's Anatomy, it's a show that once you're in it, you're doing it. There's not that much, unless, like, he would get one particular episode where, like, he's confronting his father, who after 6 seasons he's never met. He's going to come and work with me on that. Or he's going to come and work with me on, like, some of the series that he's been doing, because he doesn't necessarily have all the time to prep, and I do the prep work. Circle me back around. Where am I? Totally lost myself. That's what happens. I was answering 3 questions in my head.
Yeah, so I wanted to know, at what point do you know that an actor is done with their training and the mission is accomplished?
That's what I was getting at. So Jesse, like, once he learned how to audition and book work, I would work with him on auditions that were, like, really challenging. Cabin in the Woods. That was a really challenging audition. But pretty much once an actor understands the art form of auditioning, like, none of my staff needs to work with me. They lived with me. They breathed the Mornell method. They learned it. Once you learn how to be yourself in the role and prepare, you're good. Then if you want to come in and learn how to do role prep, that's really important. But, like, I have someone who, she's been in class with me for maybe a year and a half. She just booked a career-changing role. Career-changing. What she's going to get on set in those 3 months is the ultimate classroom.
Hmm.
It really is. And no, I don't send actors to set not knowing what they're doing.
Yeah.
But most actors have taken so much class, so much training. So I want actors to always feel like they can come back and get a tune up. But for me, it's really like 2 to 4 years and you're good.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes actors have been out of class for several years. They want to come back, as I said, for a tune up, but you kind of just know that you have gotten to a place where you know how to attack one of the hardest parts of our careers, which is the audition.
Hmm.
So there, everyone and every actor is different. We have actors who've been at the studio for 6 years. I have actors who've been at the studio for 6 months. I have actors who've been at the studio for 2 days and they book because the shift and the change is so palpable and it works so well.
Yeah.
But I think like knowing when you're ready, I don't know. I wish I was Yoda then, where I could be like, "You're ready." But it's just like sometimes I'll tell an actor, like, "I think you've been in class for like 2 years straight. Let's take a break. Let's take a break. Let's maybe Groupon some pottery classes. Let's expand who you are as a human. Because the more we have as people to pull from, the more we can put into our work. But really, my program, I wanted it to be 2 to 4 years.
Got it. Now, I also want to go into in depth with say a particular technique that you teach artists, like maybe one technique or one example that you can give me that you teach artists to actually access their truest self, because this is something that you've mentioned previously, how to be your truest self in front of the camera. It's just that little thing, but how do you actually get there? Do you have any examples that you can maybe illustrate for us?
When I first got to Atlanta, people knew who I was before I got here. And I was asked by a local TV station to do an interview with their like morning host. I want you to imagine like the most chipper, peppy, acty person ever, right? They say they're going to bring me on and they're giving me 20 minutes to work with her. I'm like, all right, great, great, great. I can do it. A few days before I'm supposed to do it, they give me 6. They cut my time and they say, we're going to give it your 6 minutes. And it's crazy. I mean, it's the most hectic thing. So I've written a little scene for her and me to do, which was like, "Hey, how are you?" I ask her, "How are you doing?" And she says, I'm okay. I'm just a little sad." I say, "Oh, why?" And she says, "Oh, I'm just missing Bill." And I say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." She's like, "Yeah, it's been rough." I'm like, "Cool. Do you want some coffee?" That was the scene, right? So I do it with her. I say, "Hey, how are you?" She's, "Oh, I'm just a little sad today." I'm like, "Really? Why?" And she's like, "I'm just missing Bill." And she's, acting. And I said, "Okay." Let's say her name was Laura. I said, "Okay, Laura, let's do it again. And just, do you miss anyone right now?" And she goes, "My mom." I said, "Is she still with us?" And she was like, "No." I said, "I'm so sorry. How are you?" She said, "I'm okay. I'm just a little sad right now. I'm sorry to hear that." Yeah, I'm really missing Bob right now. And she just like, and she was like, "What just happened?" We have so much that's just palpable, and I think sometimes with the methods, like it can get really complicated. And I'm about letting our body speak and tapping into our truth, but doing it without needing 3 hours. I do it in 3 minutes or 3 seconds. Is that a good example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key here is to take real life examples to actually be the real you, right? Like your real experiences, things that you have gone through, and thinking about them to
And
access.
that's something that we learn, how do you sense memory and your memories. And it just, I wanted to update the language that we use when it comes to training actors. We haven't updated the methodology in a long time.
Yeah. So, how is this, the Mornell method, different from, say, traditional acting techniques? What are some unique aspects of the method that you've created? And what can artists learn from this new technique on how to present themselves in front of a camera?
Well, I don't like using the word character. It implies that we're putting somebody on versus coming from within. So I say, how are you going to prepare for this person or this role? instead of saying obstacles, beats, subtext, moments before, I've changed all of that. Moments before is springboard in, it's an energy in. So it's taking some of the language that we use in theater, obstacles is a term in theater. I've changed that to hurdles. Hurdles are things that in an audition that, like, if you don't tackle them first, you're going to trip over them. You have to clear the hurdle. You're talking to four people. You're on a ship in the middle of an ocean being attacked by a shark. That's shit that when you're auditioning, most actors have no idea how to do, and it looks theatrical. And so instead of saying, well, what's the obstacle? I say, well, what's the hurdle? The hurdle is the actual thing that will fuck you in the room if you don't know how to handle it in your rehearsal. I really hope I'm allowed to swear at Dartmouth.
Yeah, it's completely fine. But
So
yeah.
so updating the language is something that I've done. I've also I've created, as I said, several hundred classes that are based off of film and TV. Period. That's what we train, but we start with the audition. When I looked around at a lot of the classes that I was in LA and what my actor friends were taking, there was a lot of like scene study, improv, like deep emotional work. But again, when it came to the audition, the hardest part of our career, although set is now very much rivaling that, um, it wasn't accurately being taught.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to give actors who had taken tons of class really the most important foundation for what books them work. My job as a coach is to get people to the classroom, which is the ultimate classroom of set. That's where we learn, that's where we grow. And that's what we were talking about with Tian a few minutes ago, a client that we share. Like him working on this show, even though it probably wasn't the end all be all dream job for him, and he's going to go on to do phenomenal things. He learned so much. His memory got so strong, his muscle. So my job is not to cripple actors and keep them in class. My job is to get them to set in a realistic, reliable, and again, I'm going to get back to that word, very realistic way. But the gate is the audition. And so too many actors were coming to me after taking tons of class and not knowing how to book the audition.
Mhm.
So I just start my program with this. You asked how people can start at my studio. They start with me in a 2-day intensive where I teach actors how to audition. I look at their tapes. It's 12 people, 12 actors. I do it once a month, sometimes twice a month. Right now I'm doing it twice a month just because we have 300 people on the wait list.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though, 300 people, and yet Marissa, my work wife number one, and our studio manager will send an email out and say, hey, the intensive's open. And generally will sell out within that same day. But there's always people slipping through the cracks. But people want to come in, and yet not all actors are like athletic in their frame of mind. They're more like, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it. And it's like, it's hard to believe that such effective training can exist, that you can literally take what I teach you and apply it to your audition within hours, within minutes, the same day, and see and feel the difference. So it's just taking what we've learned in theater, updating it, tweaking it, making it TV and film friendly and appropriate versus theater based, and more for like the person who's in the first row or the 300th row. Film and TV is about making it work for the close up, for the camera, for the person who's right there. So it's different. It's just different.
Yeah. And something else that you mentioned in one of our conversations earlier was how this is a corporation, it's a business. And so something that I'm wondering now is that, say, of course, like you've prepared the artist for auditions, they've nailed it. How do you manage the artist's creative needs with the needs of executives in production houses like Disney, NBC? What is that balance like? Yeah, I can already tell from your expressions that this is going to be a conversation. So yeah.
I mean, Sarah.
No, that is all you. I think you should take this one because I know that you've had experience recently.
So much. So much. Well, so part of my job is to work. I've been working with Apple in their music, in their hosting, with their hosts since 2016, Apple Music. When it was Beats One, I was working with their hosts. Um, And that's really where I started noticing it, even more than when I was acting or seeing my other actors deal with it. It was like, oh man, this is Apple, and they need help really learning what it is to support the artist. Because I know Apple as a company wants to, they just don't know how. And in turn, my artists and hosts, they don't know how to deal in a corporate structure because they're artists, genuinely so. And yet they're now full-time at a corporation where it's more than 9 to 5, and it's 7 days a week, and it doesn't leave room for the art. So one of the things that I've really worked on is how to advocate for yourself, how to not come from a place of fear, how to not become part of just a wheel and a machine. When you take a job on the CW, if you're not going to do CW acting, you're not going to last. When you take a job and the networks expect that you're going to do publicity and you're going to do early morning shoots one day, and the next day you're going to do late night, like call time 5 a.m., 2 days later, call time 5 p.m. Like what actors go through is at the level of Olympian type work. It truly is. The scheduling and what's expected. So number one is just not buying into the fear and the panic and the idea that you have to be more and do more and create more and be on your social media. Not buy into that. This is your life. What's going to make you stand out is you, not you trying to be something that you're not. So if you love the corporate mentality and you like being like a formulaic actor who's, more of like a G.I. Joe kind of dude who likes to brood, and CW is your jam, fuck yeah, man. But you have to understand that the people who are making the decisions are non-creatives. So when you're bringing creativity to your audition and to your work, my book is called Business Before Craft. You have to understand how to let go of the art in order to become a working actor and really understand the business. So what helps actors navigate that is mostly doing a ton of research and not going in with rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps, but Sarah, do you have, as I take a second sip of my wine, do you, I'm not counting. Who's counting?
Who's counting?
Do you have anything to say about that?
No, I think, I think the key takeaway there is learning how to advocate for yourself. And I think, to be honest, I was telling Sarah, one of my clients was here in Austin, and he is hopping on a flight in an hour, and production just sent an offer this morning, and they said, hey, he needs to COVID test. And initially they were going to do it tomorrow afternoon because he works on Monday. And they were like, hey, can we do it now? Can we send someone to you? And they didn't know he was out of town. Like, let's be real. So I just was like, I had to call the production, and I said, he's not available. He's working, and that's it. They're going to have to deal, because I think, it's the same thing as you walking into a casting office or being on a Zoom and someone's just not paying attention. You worked really hard to be there, and I think you deserve the attention that someone's, supposed to be giving you. So.
Yes, but they don't always. And you can't get affected by that, even though, it's hard. Right?
Yeah. No, I said that too. Yeah.
Wow. So now I do want to also learn about agenting and all of that. But before we go into that, Sarah, I also wanted to ask you, how does one present themselves to an agent? This is something that you have also experienced. How does one actually get that representation? What are some do's? What are some don'ts in that?
For me personally, everyone that goes to see Sarah first is like good in my book. I am probably one of the few people that really tries to get back with every blind submission email. So I'll constantly have people saying like, hey, here's my material, here's my headshot. I actually do. That's how I signed Josiah, Sarah. So it's really interesting because I think that there are plenty of people. I got an email this morning from someone, and her reel was great. Her work was great. She had some series credits, and I think there's a lot of really good working actors, but I think there's also, there's something that's always going to pop for, that star quality, right? And sometimes people will see it and sometimes they don't. But I think generally speaking, I don't like to get a ridiculous email.
Mhm.
Just a very kind of straightforward, here's my training, here's my, material or recent self-tape or a reel if you have one. And one headshot, not 16. So that is, I think, the best way to present. But I also think that um, while I like working with developmental talent and people who are, I have a couple of kids who are just fresh out of college and 3 that are still in their last semester. There's also, that's, I think, part of the reason, initially when we were speaking, I was like, Sara would be great with this, because I think that there is a level of work that you have to put in, whether that's, your personal development, but also your training. And I think she's right, to say that there are some people that will show up for themselves and show up for their careers, and sign up for this intensive and be ready to go. And I think that that's also what's going to differentiate from, someone who's really going that extra mile, especially in the beginning when you're being introduced to casting offices and, seeing new people and seeing new faces. So I don't know, that was a very long-winded answer.
No,
But
that's
yeah,
good.
but I think that generally speaking, that's kind of what I want to see if I'm seeing an email come through my inbox. But I also think that, if I even engage at any point, I think it's going to be like, hey, you better be ready to go, because that's another thing that I will say, just in our business, generally speaking, and I could speak for, our company and multiple agencies right now, is like, there are a lot of people who are lazy, like reps that are lazy, that are not going to be, they want to get, oh, you're on this show right now, it's like the hot thing, and there's a lot of hype, and like, okay, yeah, let's sign this person. But they're not willing to do that work for the 5 years. The kid that I was talking about, who has uh, a movie at Sundance right now, I've been working with him for 5 years, and he's had 2 things released. He's got 3 things released this year that is now just putting him on a completely different path. And I think that, he was someone that was taking a bus at 4 a.m. and coaching with Sara, and, getting
Like in
picked.
a bathroom. Like he would be in the
Oh,
just
yeah.
most random places, poor guy.
Yeah. I mean, he, living 6 people to an apartment in North Hollywood. I mean, you make it work. But I think it's like, there are stories like that, and there are people like that. And, like she said, like, someone else is always going to be working harder. And I think the one other thing that, not to be like a Sara, but like, also the one other thing, I'm pretty new to the business, as you know. So I think there is also a level of like, you need to be sure you know what you're doing, because there are a lot of people that will act like they know what they're doing. And I'm not one of those people. When I talk to my clients, I'm like, look, I'm not a movie buff. I'm not a film buff. I studied marketing. I studied pharmacy. Like, I wasn't there watching National Treasure like you were, however many years ago. But I think what it is like, you better know, that's one thing that Sara teaches, is like, yeah, read the script, do the work, check, know the tone of your show when you're auditioning. So I think all of those things combined are just like, it's common sense for people to just really sort of be like, hey, my head's in the game, and like, I'm ready to go. So that's, I think, my level of expectation too. When somebody comes in and I agree to work with them, it's like, your headshots, everything, all of that matters. Unfortunately, I hate headshots, but like, it all matters. Your package matters, because these people don't know you. So this is a first impression. And, again, you're meeting a casting office for the first time. If they think you're super green, they're not going to read you again for a little while. So, and it's also a reflection of our company and, the rest of the talent that we have. So yeah, super important.
Yeah, so I think just being there, being on top of things, and also just presenting yourself as who you are, which I think has been the theme of the talk. It's like being your true self and just putting yourself out there, being straightforward. So when we're talking about that those are some really useful advice, but I know that a lot of the times, these representations, like you said, they stretch out for years. So what is some advice that you would give to actors on working with talent managers for long periods of times? What are some things that they should definitely take care of?
So personal development for me is like key. Like I think that I think if you're not focused on yourself, there's no way it's going to bleed into your relationships, your other stuff, your home life. I mean, if you don't have your kind of like your safe space, if you will, I think that it's not, it's going to affect your work. Let's just say that. So I think to start with personal development as one thing. I think that, training and every rep is different. I think this is part of the reason I didn't want to be on with 5 reps is because everyone does, I've been on panels like that before. And I think, some of us even down to like how a resume is formatted or like we have different preferences. But I think that, what's important is to know that this person who is, representing you, who's putting you out there knows who you are. And I don't think that everyone needs to, be your best friend necessarily. I have a very personal relationship with my clients. But I know a lot of people that don't, and that's fine. That's somebody's choice. But I think, if you speak another language, if you have a random skill, it's things that your reps should be aware of so that things are not overlooked. And then going into like the longevity of it, I think there can be conversation. I think there's a lot of times where people feel like they're too scared to talk to their reps. I think that they feel like, oh, well, I'm not going out, but what can I get an email like maybe saying like, what can I be doing? Or like, what else should I be doing? And it's like, hey, like, do you need to get back in class with Sarah? Do you need to do this? But I think that
Change your look. Do you need to get a new headshot? Do you need to do a phenomenal self-tape for an audition that you didn't even have, but maybe a friend of yours had, but you just know you could kill it because that's going to give Sarah something to pitch you with. So many times actors think a reel has to be work that they've already booked and that's on TV. But actors of mine and agents and managers that I work with, they use my actors' self-tapes to pitch them
Mhm.
because they want to see what's a reflection of the work that you're going to do when I send you a job that could make us both money.
Yeah.
So I think working to make your agent and manager's job easier
Mhm.
is so important. Understanding that Sarah will work basically for free for years, and that it's not her job to handhold, and that actors have to be really proactive in making sure their special skills are growing. That it's not just like, where are my auditions, but are my materials in order? Am I taking a class that changes my life every week? Am I doing things that are outside my comfort zone? Am I becoming a better human being? Like just being a better human being. I left my agents 3 times. 3 times they wanted me to come back. That's unheard of. You sever relationships with your reps and it is like death.
Yeah.
But it's because I always made their job easier. I treated them and their assistants like gold.
Yeah.
Like gold. I valued their time. I was interested in their families, their
Mhm.
well-being, their hearts. When we would go out for drinks, I would talk about my career for 5 to 10 minutes and then get into a conversation about life or them or art or clowns. I don't fucking know, but like I I always like really made sure that my representatives felt appreciated because I know how hard it is to just get that appointment. And that my job as an actor is to constantly update my look and my resume and my reel and my materials and to have headshots consistently that represent who I am.
Mhm.
Those are investments. That's my Christmas present, my Hanukkah present, my birthday present. It all had to do with my career.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting because you think those are some of the just very basic things. I've had people who, have done all those things, and I'm like, okay, is it your speaking pattern? Like, what is it that's not getting us to this next place? Is it someone who's lived here in the States for several years, grew up here, but still has a slight accent. You know, there are things that are going to affect your, you know, your performance just generally.
Have you heard no so many times that when you approach the work, now you're pushing a little bit? You're acting more. We're seeing the work. We're seeing a little desperation. Like all of that stuff reads.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
it is very important to be nice to people's assistants. I will say that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, people will be mean to my staff and not to me, and we don't tolerate that. It's so I dated Mary Verneu's brother for 2 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Mary Verneau is one of the more powerful casting directors, I would say, in the States.
Yeah.
Like she'd be in the top 20. Would you agree or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Top
And
10.
it was like fucking insane to go around with them to Sundance, to restaurants, to have her walk into her living room when we were like, smoking pot and below is Coke is everywhere. She's like, here, read these 2 movies. I'll bring you in on them. Like, it was like, what is happening to my life? But I never wanted anything from her. I never wanted anything, but everybody around her did. And it was so transparent because actors aren't that fucking good. And they'd want like, oh no, they'd be kissing up to her. And it's like, you can see it, you can read it. When someone is not nice to an assistant, but is super nice to the agent, like that's transparent. So unless you're a huge star, you can't do that. Don't do that. Don't ever do it. Don't do it when you're a huge star.
Yeah. Just don't.
Don't.
Yeah.
so I guess the key here is to all the actors who will be listening to this, be honest, be real, be true, like in your heart, and don't be rude. Be kind to people. I think those are some
Very
Make
basic.
sure that your skin looks like a baby's ass. But really make it sure that it's as tough as a rhinoceros.
Yeah.
So be your soft, beautiful, wonderful selves, your open selves, but you've got to have a thick skin.
Yeah.
Don't let that thick skin hurt who you are.
Yeah.
And if it does, take a break.
Yeah.
And something that also came up in this conversation was how hard it is for agents to get that appointment, which is, I think, something that you mentioned, Sarah. I do want to talk about the agenting business in and of itself as well, because there are people who are interested in agenting, getting to know more about that. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? What is that business really like? Like, now I want to flip it around and talk about that a little bit.
Well, so as I mentioned before, I kind of fell into this business on accident. I have been fortunate enough to work for, a nicer group. I will say that. My transition from the agency side into the management side, we're talking about being real, right? So I was at a place for about a year, a boutique agency. We were very hands-on. I had come from another agency prior to that. And this agency had signed, I would say, about 60% of my clients commercially. And somewhere within that first year, they were like, one of the agents was having an ego problem and was like, I don't want to represent her talent anymore. And for me, as a young rep, and as someone who is, always down to fight for myself, I don't care if people like me. I think it's one of those things where I was like, you know what, that's fine. Like, if you don't want to do that, I'm leaving. Like, I'm out and I'm taking my clients with me. And that's what I did. And there was no bad blood with the agency owner or anything like that. But I think it was that was my first kind of knock to really have to fight for myself. In terms of like are you looking for like how things operate or like on the day to day? Is that what so we have a website, and we have grid pages if we're lucky enough to find them. We basically submit to casting and then we follow up with pitches. So like we'll see, a certain show with certain roles and then kind of go through. Right now, we're reading a ton of scripts. We have, on the agency side, there are sometimes groups that do coverage, which is basically splitting up the casting offices. And, each person is responsible for calling the casting office and saying, what is your prototype for this role? What are you focused on first? Are you working off of an offer list or a short list? And just kind of going from there. But you really have to fight, I think, especially now, particularly in LA too, everything is so oversaturated. And now that everything is also gone online, it's great because I think some casting offices feel like they can see more talent. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you're sending in a self-tape. We're not used to getting feedback on our clients for the first round of tapes or first auditions that come in. So you're really sort of feeling, I think as an actor, you would be feeling like you're sending your tape into a void and maybe it's not being seen. So it's really a matter of us kind of pushing to make sure, we're putting our best foot forward and doing what we can for our clients.
You did mention that your journey was also unconventional. You started off in pharmaceuticals, moved to fashion, and then moved into representation. So, can you talk about your journey? How did that happen? How did you end up here?
So I'll give you the shortest possible story, but I took a health occupations class in school, and I did rotations in high school. And I had been hired with Walgreens like straight out of high school. I think I was a junior. I was working as a pharmacy tech. Like took the board exam so I could work. And I was pre-pharmacy at university, and I was kind of like, okay, this is cool. Like I can do this, right? 4 more years or whatever. And I was floating at the time, and I ended up cussing out a patient. So this guy was just rude, and it was, I had been working with Walgreens for like 10 years at that point, and I think what had happened in that moment is just like I basically, the guy was talking down to me, and I was like, you know what? No. And the pharmacist that was standing 6 feet away from me, like, didn't step in. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to handle this myself. So essentially, like, I got fired because this guy went and complained to corporate, which was fine. And I was like, I need a job where I can cuss people out and still have my job. So I I was kind of in the fashion scene a little bit. I was doing a little bit of production work in Houston, where I'm from, and putting things together. I put in, like, we have something called White Linen Night in the Heights, and like large community events, and like a large scale for someone who's like not really been around that. And I just kind of applied on a whim to Parsons, and I got in. So I think I applied in November, and then in like January I started. And it was just sort of talk about, Sarah having very supportive parents. Like, my parents are Middle Eastern. They were like, you're going to be a doctor. And I'm like, I'm not going to be a doctor anymore. So it was like a really, it was an interesting journey. I think part of it is like they see me now and they're like, okay, cool. Like, you bought a house, you're like kind of sufficient. But, I think at the same time, they're sort of like, okay, you work with Nicolas Cage, but like, what else do you do? Like, you're just behind a computer all the time, So
Congrats on his little resurgence, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's fun. I'm excited for Renfield. It's gonna be cool.
What's
So,
the Daddy Long Legs or Daddy? That's just
long legs.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I just was working with someone on his next project, which is very creepy. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but he has had a resurgence. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
What else do you do?
I'm sorry?
What else do you do?
I mean, I think, I will say, I think in the last few years in particular, and this is just me talking about, everyone is sort of, I'm stressing on my clients, personal development, take care of yourself, be healthy, do what you can for yourself. And I think that's another thing is like, boundaries were a big learning curve for me.
Yep.
So yeah, so I think that that has been something that, particularly in the last 3 years, but even more so in the last year, I've been like, okay, I think that, to go back to the agencies that I worked with, there is a sense of urgency always. And I lived in New York, so I'm like, all right, go, go, go. Like, I'm here for it. And not to say that I'm so lax with my work, but I think there's, my phone was going off and I just had to put it on the floor like twice. But it's just, I think it's one of those things where like, if somebody needs something that bad, they're going to call you. And I think sometimes it's like, a few years ago, I actually turned my notifications off on my text messages, social media, like all of it. I don't even keep social media on my phone anymore. Um, and I think there's just I will say, you know, whoever it is on the other end, whether it's a client or someone else, I think there are people that need to realize like, hey, we have a life, like all of us, Sarah included. And, for me right now too, like I relocated to Austin last year. So I'm 2 hours ahead of LA. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not really like wanting to pick up your phone call at 10 o'clock at night. Is it urgent? Like, can it wait? Can you send me an email? And obviously there are times that I have to do that, but I think that, not to say I don't like love my job. Yeah, I do. But I think there are some times where people take advantage of it and it's just not cool. So I will say like for anyone that's thinking about going into this side of business, I think that it takes a certain personality. I think a lot of the times I think about, especially my clients, not even the ones that are coming out of college, but the ones that are married now with kids. I'm like, you know, even if you're interning or working as an assistant, it's like, this is someone's livelihood. Like they have to put food on the table for their family. And like, you can't just not do your job, you know? And I think that goes for everyone, but that's always how I viewed, my work and what I do. And as Sarah mentioned, we don't get paid until our clients get paid. So, and it's a fraction of it. So it's kind of like, we're all kind of busting. It takes a village to do it.
Yeah.
From us to the talents work to the, the acting coaches and the people on set. It takes a lot to go into a production.
Amazing. And I know that it's time to almost wrap up, and I do want to be mindful about that. So, parting words of wisdom, what advice would you give to students who are just starting out and want to make it to Hollywood? Like, what is it that they should do? What are some things that they should keep in mind as they're doing that from your experience of so many years?
Do you want to go first? Do you
Up
want
to
me
you.
to go first?
Up to
I
you.
mean, I would say on my end, so I'll let Sarah like top it off. But I think on the rep end, soak up as much knowledge as you can. I think it's important to get a feel for what is out there. You know, if you have the opportunity for internships, whether it's at a production company or an agency, I think even as an actor, if you're able to intern as an agent or as like at an agency or management company, I think it's really important to see what goes on behind the scenes. I've had some clients do that in college and they're like, wow, this is so eye-opening, even down to like turning in your tapes on time and labeling them correctly. Like you think the smallest things like wouldn't make that big of a difference, but they do. So I would say that. And also, I think the one other thing that I push on my clients and that I do for myself is just kind of read everything. Um, we call them the trades articles. So Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety. And then also like, if you're an avid reader, there's so many things being adapted right now. So it's like to get kind of a head start on that and know, all these things and Reese Witherspoon's book club are being adapted into TV shows and movies. It's like if you're into that and you're reading it, then you're ahead of the game because the minute that announcement comes out, it's like they're already kind of going with it. So that's my thing, is just kind of soaking up the knowledge and really gaining experience where you have the opportunity to.
Amazing. And Sarah, now you can take it away and give us some of your parting wisdom.
Oh gosh. Wow. The advice would be to really check your work ethic. I think people ask me what was the difference in my career, was that I worked harder than anyone I knew. It wasn't about going to clubs or networking. I didn't build my career on that. And my dad's best friend started CAA. Like I had networking, but I never went into it expecting that someone was going to do it for me. And I believed in myself, even in moments of fear and doubt. Underneath everything was like this deep seated belief and faith that I could do this, that this is what I was meant to do. And I think if that's where you're at, if you believe this is where you are meant to be and this is what you want to do, then do it. Just know it's going to be one of the hardest career paths in the world. It truly is. And do your research. As Sara was saying, do your research. I'm talking directly into camera. Do your research. There's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of people who make a lot of money off of dreams.
Yeah.
And so talk to people you know, like go to a valued source of information, a reliable source of information, and don't sign anything without having people look it over. Like little things, you know, but don't look for the answers outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Look for information, but always return to what it is that you want to do. There's no correct way or path of doing this. It's just the individual way. There's understanding the industry, but then there's forging your own way of existing in it. And that comes from your voice and your past and your experience and your knowledge. And I've been doing this a long time and I fucking love it. I love film. I love TV. I love this industry. I think we need to see more of a shift and more of a change. And I can't wait to see more young people coming in and going and disrupting. That's what I've been doing for a really long time. And we need more of that on the studio side. We need more of that, like Sara, who really are invested in their clients versus just seeing them as numbers. So we need young people coming in going, I don't care that that's the way it's been. I can exist within those rules, but I'm also looking at how I can change them and adapt them in a way that's going to be more cohesive for everyone. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Incredible, incredible talk. I loved listening to the two of you and, learning about your career journey and learning more about the industry. And thank you so much for just taking the time and being here. It was incredible. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having us.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
We have to take a picture.
Oh my God.
Okay. We do. I think I can take a screenshot, although this is recorded.
She really wants it.
Oh, we could also do, oh, you mean like a screenshot or on the phone?
Either one. I could do a phone. I could do a phone. We can stop recording.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll stop recording now. But thank you.